Hi everyone. Woo! There it is. Oh no. It's be one of those days. Hi, welcome to Curious Endeavourances Book Club, where we read anything and everything. If you haven't joined us before, we read books because we are a book club. That's what book clubs do. Hello.
Great description.
What more description do you need from me? No, we operate through Goodreads. I'm sorry, I can't English. We operate on Goodreads, so you can go in and see what we've read, what we felt about it, and we read a book every month, and at the end of the month we get together and discuss that book, and occasionally we write reviews for that book. Less occasionally than before.
Blogs and forget to post them on the blog we're supposed to post them on.
Yes, that happens too. Okay, introductions. So we have Ashley Newell.
That was like a legendary pause, just in case you were wondering. That was totally intentional. Hi, guys. This month's pick is mine, so you'll be hearing more from me about what we read this month.
Yep. And we have Julianne Wilson.
Hi.
And I'm Caitlin Perry. That is my name. I've been having problems.
With the Englishing.
I can't English. I just can't. I can't do it. So this month's pick was The Revolutions by Felix Gilman. It was Ashley's pick, so she can do the honors of reading the back.
Or the inside flap, if you have this version. Because the back is just a whole bunch of reviews for every other book except this one. Which we discussed before in the pre-show. In 1893, young journalist Arthur Shaw is at work in the British Museum reading room when the Great Storm hits London, wreaking unprecedented damage. In its aftermath, Arthur's newspaper closes, owing him money, and all his debts come due at once. His fiancée, Josephine, takes a job as a stenographer for some of the fashionable spiritualist and occult societies of fin de siècle London society. At one of her meetings, Arthur is given a job lead for what seems to be accounting work, but at a salary many times what any clerk could expect. The work is long and peculiar, as the workers spend all day performing unnerving calculations that make them hallucinate or even go mad, but the money is compelling. Things are beginning to look up when the perils of dabbling in the esoteric suddenly come to a head. A war breaks out between competing magical societies. Josephine joins one of them for hazardous occult exploration, an experiment which threatens to leave her stranded at the outer limits of consciousness among the celestial spheres. Arthur won't give up his great love so easily and hunts for a way to save her, as Josephine fights for survival, somewhere in the vicinity of Mars. So when we said we would read anything and everything, this book is anything and everything all in once, which could be super epic if it carries out well. And we'll see what the other curious members thought of The Revolutions being everything and anything in one solid package. So initial impressions, ladies.
Okay. Okay, I started out really hopeful because when they started talking about the occult stuff, I had a very, it felt very Call of Cthulhu to me.
I actually have more desire to read Lovecraft after reading this.
Well, but that's the thing. It's like I started to get that little sense just in the beginning of the occult stuff. Like when they were explaining it and setting it up, and like Atwood is talking about, oh, this part, like, yeah, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, it's so Cthulhu, and I was getting really excited, and then it was just a letdown.
And you did get the crazy alien creature that they summoned from another world, and you're like, oh my god, open portal!
So exactly, so you kind of get that Cthulhu, Weird Tales, Lovecraftian thing, but then it was just so much, the first half of the book was just so much building engine, building another engine, doing the calculations, doing more calculations, running from place to place.
What is Arthur confused about now?
And all
that would have been a good title for the book.
So I struggled with the first half Then Ashley's just...
I'm sorry, it's brilliant. It's brilliant. It totally should be the title because it makes more sense than the actual title. I'm sorry, Mr. Gilman. I'm sure you worked really hard on this book.
Anyway, so I struggled through the first half, especially the middle, part, because the beginning was just kind of like, okay, setting up a cult, okay. But I just found there's just so much description and so much talking about what they were doing, and not a lot of things being done, and I just got
talk, not a lot of actual action.
Exactly. It's a lot of talk. Like, I felt like you could have cut a lot of that part down. And then they get to Mars, or you start to get more of Josephine. Yeah, who's been stranded, and you spend half the book, you get a little glimpse at first when she gets there, and then you just don't hear about her for a while. And you're like, but what's happening on Mars, or near Mars, on Mars's moon? And then you finally get there, and I got so wrapped up in that, and I was like, oh, this is actually really good. I really enjoy this. And then it goes back to Earth, and oh, you guys are so boring.
And mildly incompetent.
Yes, so incompetent. So by the time they were all on Mars or near Mars, I started to really enjoy it more.
Yeah.
But it took so long to get there that I just have such mixed feelings about the book.
Well, that's the funny thing, too, because based on the back, I didn't get the impression that the pre-Mars stuff was going to take so long.
Yeah.
I really thought that it would have been much sooner in the story. And also, there's a little bit of an inconsistency on the back, too, where it says that Josephine takes a job as a stenographer, when they have money trouble, which isn't true, because she's been working with them since before she meets him.
Mm-hmm.
But, yeah, no. I had basically the same issues as you with the, too much completely useless description. That sounds mean, I'm sorry. But too much description that was really unnecessary, and took away from the actual plot. I feel like this book could easily have been condensed quite a bit. It did not need to be, how much was it, 400 and something pages? It didn't need to be that long.
Yeah.
And if there had been a little bit less in the beginning, then there could have been a little bit more at the end, where ironically it's lacking.
It just... pacing and priority
of
what to focus on seems to be the big downfall
Most
of
definitely.
this book.
Yeah.
Okay, the narrative tone just doesn't
It was dry.
really work. Yeah, it was dry, but it didn't. It thought it wasn't, which was kind of the painful part, because it would try to have witty banter, and every now and then it would try to modernize itself, even though that didn't really work because it's Victorian set. But it's the narrative voice was as awkward as Arthur himself, and it didn't work. Unfortunately,
Poor Arthur.
And I was saying this during the pre-show. Because in the beginning we meet Arthur, and he works for papers, but he's trying to actually be a novelist.
Mm-hmm.
He's trying to write detective stories, and in the beginning we get excerpts of what he's writing, and unfortunately, we never really come back to us. It would have been interesting to see him, try to incorporate some of his life in peril moments into his writing, but he seems to abandon it entirely. Which, he has to rescue his fiancée, so
it's from Mars.
But the writing of his excerpts, and it's not a first-person narrative. We have this other omniscient narrator who follows Arthur, but it's so Arthur-toned that they write the same way. So this is the excerpt from the novel he's trying to write. I'll just read this whole section. The professor appeared to expect an answer. Since Dr. Is it Syme?
Syme?
So, yeah.
That's why I knew the name. Josephine wrote the book at the end of the book.
Yeah, she picked up the character. Yeah.
I was like, why do I know that name?
Yep. Since after time, so no place to take shelter, he began to explain the whole story, the process by which, according to his usual method, he had tackled each part of Vane's wild scheme, how he ascended that mountain of horrors, from the poisoning at the Café de l'Europe, to cipher the newspaper advertisements that led to the uncovering of the anarchists in Deptford, which in turn led to the something or other by some means, and so on, and thus to the discovery of the bomb beneath Her Highness's coach, and thus inevitably here to the cathedral. And there's a lot of that something or other by some means, even if it's not explicitly said in this book. The omissions, the way we speed past some things.
While dwelling on
And
others.
I made note on the excessive use of etc. that the narrator likes to throw everywhere in like the first 250 pages of this. By the last half, we don't get the etceteras. I was looking for them. But those first bits, all the struggles that Arthur has in trying to write his book, because he can't start it. That's why he specifically says he's starting at the end, because he kind of knows where it wants to go, but he has no idea how it's going to get there. And I feel like that's exactly what this narrator is struggling with too. He knows it has to get to Mars. He knows that this couple has to try to find each other. But he's going a long way around trying to fill in the gaps. So the end seems more succinct. Like we talked about how much more captivating it is when we're actually at Mars and we're exploring Mars, and that's always where we wanted to go.
The angel aliens that are so cool.
I do feel like that's the most developed. And then it's like, oh right, we need to fill in some blanks here.
Yeah.
And it was this long tread back to the beginning.
Yeah.
I had issue with the narrative development.
Yeah.
And it was a surprise for me because I thought I'd have a bigger issue with the premise of the story. Victorian occult group
Well,
in a romance setting, because it said it was a romance setting, trying to get to Mars. And I'm like, oh my god, this is going to be cheesy as hell.
But it was so...
And the premise actually wasn't too bad.
It was just like
sabotaged itself.
Yeah. No, it's funny because as I'm reading, like as we went back and reread, just the little synopsis there, I'm like, yeah, see, it sounded like there were so many like magical wars and like occult this and that in Victorian London. Like it sounded like it had so much promise.
We like just grazed past all the wars. Like even at the end when Josephine's back, she's like, and this happened. The wars continued, but she laid low, and eventually they resolved themselves. And
she was in like South America by that time, so she didn't notice.
Yeah.
Like what?
Like, yeah, we definitely just took a broom to a lot of this. Like, there is a huge rug somewhere. Just all that dust that was in the tower in Mars, that's just all the missing pieces that we don't want to, the loose ends we don't want to deal with. It's all those layers of dust in those towers.
I just realized something, too. What was that rash? I want to know what that rash was.
Yeah, we never
explain it.
Figure out because it started with just from like the ropes.
But they all had it.
Mm-hmm.
They all had some kind of rash.
And it kept growing and covered them.
Yeah,
and we never actually
have, but Vaz would have. So, yeah.
And we never got the full development of this. Not the sphere of the eye, but those people of the eye that Atwood was working for, and what it was he was trying to build, and what it was he'd promised. Like, we could have lingered on that moment. Like, there could have been a moment where, oh my god, these other creatures that we still haven't met, we still only know about them, like, through brief history, they're going to try to take over Earth or something like that. So there's these hints of, like, epic things that are going to happen, and it's just like, under the rug, we're not going to deal with it right now. Too much development would be required. It's like, what? What is happening?
Like that might have been a problem with the ending as well. Like, that might be why it was put in such a brief form. Because there seemed to be such a risk about accidentally letting those people know how to get back to Earth. But Josephine seems to be going back and forth quite a bit. Yeah. Wouldn't that be a risk? Wouldn't that be a hazard? And how did Arthur get away from them in the first place?
And then when they do wake up and Jupiter's all like, oh, you weren't actually there. It was just a figment of Atwood's imagination that trapped you there. And it's like, so, wait, were they at Mars? Were they not in Mars? What about those people who died? Because I could have sworn Baz died again for the second time. We thought he was dead.
He was like sinking into sand, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then that's when
he like wakes up.
No, because the thing with Baz and Josephine is when they escape, it's because they're both trying to go up. And because so Josephine's trying to fly as far up as she can go, and Baz is thinking must get out of the sand. So they're both willing themselves as far up as they can go. And because Atwood is dead, he's no longer holding them down. So that's why they both can
get back. And then, but she was carrying Arthur up.
And then she
somehow lost him.
Yeah. Well, maybe he wasn't thinking up. And so
she
went up. She left the. Well, because then you theoretically could say she's thinking up, but it's not her body, so she just leaves the body, and then
Arthur.
That was Arthur something I was waiting for. So she's in this wasp body, and then she's encountering them. Like, how would they rescue her and take her home? Like, apparently it didn't matter because they woke up before any actual travel took place. But she never exited the wasp body that we saw, and I was curious because she was ghostly and they were solid. So would they have been able to find her? Would she be able to make herself solid?
I
don't think they thought that far.
But that's one of the things that bothers me, is because there's so many gaps and holes. And
I feel like there was just a lot of stuff that didn't get thought over and wasn't properly developed, and it just, Ashley, as you said, like, it just kind of got swept under the rug. Like, let's just turn away from that.
Which is unfortunate because the alien world seems to have a lot thought out. Like, there were all these nations and this history, and we came here, and our brothers and sisters are there, and they come here to attack us every time we're close, and we have this language, and we have this, like...
But even then, those chapters are super short and super brief sections. No. So they're really interesting, but, I mean, you finish 3 chapters, and you never hear of it again. It's like, and then it's over.
Yeah.
Yeah, I found myself constantly, and it's, like, even right from the... Like, as soon as we started seeing stuff a little bit from Josephine's perspective, I kept being like, can we get back to her? Because
she's the only one doing anything interesting. Arthur's just confused all the time.
I feel like if they had had normal lives, Josephine would have had to take care of Arthur every day, just like make sure he got out of the house in one piece. And like, that's what I felt like. She was the one who just kept him together. It's like, where are my keys? Where are my shoes? Where's my hat? Where's my, like...
The story would have been, I think, stronger if it had been a Josephine perspective. Like, we could have started it, like, in that occult setting where they called her in on the, like, just release Arthur from this job. I don't want him to be mixed in with this. And that would have been enough of a tie-in on, like, oh, she loves this guy, and she has this secret life. And then we could have gotten to so much detail with everything else, and maybe, like, little flashbacks on the rest. But, I mean, starting with the storm, which meant nothing to us at that time.
Well, that's the thing, like, the storm is, in theory, it had its importance, but in that, like, we had no context. And so it was just, like, it's just a giant storm.
Yeah. And it's unfair because there were some, like, even though the narrative was really dry and monotonous, like, there are points where, again, it seems like they're trying really hard and trying to be clever about things, but it just, like, it lost something. Like, going through some of my sticky notes when I was actually, like, finding, like, the clever lines, so it, like, sank in as I read it, and I acknowledged what it was, but I really had to go back over it for it to sink in on me, like, oh, that's like tee-hee-hee. So when he's first running into Boyle's shop, the big storm's happening, he'd heard of hurricanes blowing things all over the place, and the sort of places that had hurricanes, but one didn't expect it in London. No doubt it was even more puzzling to the eel, who was now flopping in the middle of it. And so I read that, and I'm like, okay, that's kind of witty. But everything else had been so dry that I wasn't mentally ready for that little bit of wit. And then afterwards I'm thinking, oh, that's got to be a nod back to Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. That, like, haha, poor eel. Because all I could think of was the whale and the pot of flowers. the whale trying to figure, as they're falling through the sky, the
Oh,
whale's
yeah.
trying to figure out what's going on and inventing things, and the pot of flowers, the only thought going through his mind is, oh, not again. And we don't know why the pot of flowers thought that. And so just the idea that this out-of-place eel, not understanding why it's where it is, and I'm like, that's actually kind of cute. But I almost lost it entirely because it was just so bland. And even here, they're all like frazzled because they're hiding from the storm. Well, yes, that's best. In my current state, I feel just about competent to be a doorstop. Because he's holding the door closed, and it's like, that's cute. But again, it's so dry, and it's like, oh, why am I missing this?
It's funny because I feel like that kind of comment, I almost feel like Arthur's not clever enough to have actually come up with that on his own. Is that bad?
Well, he's built up, I think, with more character here in the beginning. But again, the narrative is so dry that we're missing it. And then he just gets all frazzled when he gets into the occult stuff and overworked. Yeah. And then even the first introduction of Josephine. And it's like, I just met this person, but I'm going to tell you all about these secret occult things and all these people I work for and all the secret things. And it goes on for like 3 freaking pages. Okay, 2 pages. No, that's 3 pages. That is 2.5 pages. And it's like, you just met this person, and you're giving specific details about, well, first I was hired by Miss Sedgley to perform all these like occult things and dabbling in the spiritual world, but I think these people are just crooks. And then I was hired to do this, and it's like, wow. Like, that's a whole mess of information drop that we clearly didn't need, because it makes so much more sense when you go further and actually see her in action.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I did have one.
And all this back to the Duke and how important it was, and it never came back to anything.
Yeah.
Like, it shook everyone, but like, I was waiting for it to be tied into like the occult war or something like that.
Yeah, and we expected that occult war to be a bit more important.
Okay, sorry. Bye. Sorry. I thought Atwood did mention that, like, the Duke, like, he kind of was like, oh, they clearly killed him, but that was...
But again, it was just like...
Yeah.
But like, how do you...
Sentences.
But
my issue...
No, so the development, okay, they cleared it, but for what purpose? What did it accomplish? Like,
yeah.
How does this advance your side of the war?
Was he not funding them?
The Duke?
I thought he was interested, so he was funding Atwood's company, and that's why they killed him.
Possibly, I don't know.
Or did
Tony glazed over so many things.
And there's a problem too. I did skim a lot, so it's kind of like, did that happen? Did I tie 2 concepts together? I think that's also why I hated Atwood, because he tended to just be like, this. You're like, where? What is the basis for that?
Yeah.
This is something of the etheric, and this is circles, and this is this. Why?
Which works for him giving that information to Arthur, but it doesn't work for us because we never get any development anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Like, where are the chapters where we get like the seeded, like, underhand stuff that he's doing behind closed doors? Mm-hmm. That would at least fill in some gaps for us. Arthur still doesn't need to know all the details. He can still roam around confused as all get out. But the reader shouldn't, especially when it never wraps up to anything.
Mm-hmm.
Bye. And congratulations. Just a minute, good. All right, you get these. Further, please. Thank you. Sorry.
No.
Being at home.
Mm.
Yes, Mom. I don't know.
So we were talking about Atwood?
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
I don't know. It's funny because we get a little snippet, like, right near the beginning, with Atwood and Jupiter, where we get, like, that one little bit that's from their perspective right during the storm when they're doing that little I don't know, like
Right, when they're together,
exploration.
they're like, oh, someone
Yeah,
intervened or something.
but we never, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think we ever actually see from their perspectives again, do we?
Not that I can remember.
Yeah, that would have been really useful. Mind you, it was mildly entertaining when you get like the stuff on Mars, and then all of a sudden it's like, wait, Atwood knows more than he said he knew.
Yeah.
But even the idea of him getting the information from those like past civilizations and all that, like that would have been nice to build on, rather than just like glaze over. Like again, Arthur doesn't need to know about this.
But we do.
Yeah, the reader should know something about this.
Yeah.
I think even from Sun's perspective.
Sorry.
I just think that even if we had like maybe not directly from his perspective, but like from Sun's or something, like because he was always suspicious. So like.
And that was a really quick end for Sun too. Like there's a battle and he's the first one down, and there's like okay, so the aliens killed him, and there's like the no, I don't think it was the aliens. I think it was them. And they're like okay, we just keep going.
It's like no, Atwood killed him. It's like well, I know I saw the aliens kill him. I think it's the problem too, is that they all start throwing around so many suspicions, and you're like, I don't know anymore.
Yeah.
Well, even when they arrived on the planet, I'm trying to figure out, okay, are they on the planet? Are they on the moon? I don't understand where they actually landed, because it's totally changing my perspective of what's happening.
Yeah. I don't know.
And I think, like, a big thing too is just like they built up that threat, like from Josephine's perspective, they built up that threat of the people of the Eye or whatever they were called.
Yeah.
But then there was
they stopped it, and that's all that matters, and then the book was over.
They barely even really seemed to encounter them.
But I think that's the problem is like as we talk about it, and I felt like this as I was getting towards the end too. It's like I feel like needs to be a sequel or like a.
No, I just think he needs to develop what he actually wrote the first time around.
Yeah. But based on what's already written, I feel like I need a companion piece to go with it, with more on like just focused on like maybe on Orpheus or something.
Orpheus seemed like he was going to be awesome, and I wanted more development on, because he was like, I don't trust you, random blue sphere woman, and but he was all like, I'll do what I want, because I'm a warrior who doesn't have to listen to other people, and I'm strong enough to do the crossing. And I was waiting for him to actually, because she said she would like to cross over to Mars, and I was waiting for the moment where, like, especially after they were attacked, she fought, she defended herself, she saved the infant, she got them to rise up, because like that was a whole change, is they just defended where they were, and then once the other people fled, they were just supposed to stand back and wait for the next month to go by when they would do it all over again. But because she went and saved the infant, that got the others to go back and try to take out more as they were fleeing. So that was a big change. And so I thought, she's totally proven herself as a warrior. Like, she's a strong wasp warrior that, like, she never was in London, because she would talk about her life there and how she'd never gone anywhere, never really done anything. She had actually a very reclusive life, and she's now out there doing these things, and being able to develop that and have her explore that world and earn Orpheus's trust, go on a campaign to Mars and grab the supplies. Like, that would have been really awesome, but we stopped there right after that battle, went back to Arthur, and then she just happened to be like, oh, look, we found them.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, another one of those plot gaps.
Was anyone else kind of bothered by the supplies that they imagined over for themselves?
Yes, very much.
And yet had to take inventory and lug it around. And
I have to say, I feel like that should have been the point for them all to go like, that one's up to something, because a lot of the stuff was what he insisted on bringing. It's like camping gear, yes. Food, yes.
Champagne.
Champagne and watercolors
and all this stuff. You just felt like, I feel like that should have, like, as you're telling me, I'm like, shouldn't that have been the point where you go, why?
There was another really funny thing that caught my
And so
attention.
it's imagined stuff, and they're like, we need it for trade and all this stuff. I'm like, how did you know that this was going to be solidified? And why did you need the physical stuff in the room with you for the ritual in order to take it with you?
Yeah.
Because that's when they set up. They had to pack it all in that room as they left their bodies. So their imagined souls traveled, and so did the imagined essence of the supplies in
would
that
have
room.
even gotten there. How did the stuff even get there?
I wouldn't have even thought to bring it because I wouldn't have thought it possible. Because like our souls are going so.
And the thing
Yeah,
is,
exactly.
if it's just imagined stuff, because they keep saying you don't actually need to eat, you don't actually need to drink, because you're not actually here. It's just your imagined self. So I'm thinking, so why the heck are we lugging this stuff up around on sleds? Can't we just be like, I'm feeling thirsty. I know I'm not actually thirsty. I'm going to imagine my canteen of water.
That would have made too much sense.
I don't understand why we spent so much time. Like Arthur's there, like counting the supplies, and they're really fixated on how many matches they have left. And I'm just like, this.
The fire thing.
I don't understand.
Okay, so the matches barely wanted to light, right?
Because the air is so thin on Mars.
Air. Correct me if I'm wrong, but wouldn't that have had some sort of impact on the guns?
He even said that at the beginning. He was like, "Oh, I can't remember exactly what he said, but they were like being wary of the guns because of the spark, and they weren't sure how it would react with the air."
But yet they still worked
Based on the
perfectly when they
matches.
needed them.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like that wouldn't have worked.
The fire can't breathe. The imaginary fire can't breathe in the air, and yet they can.
Yeah.
Riddle me this.
But maybe that's just because their bodies don't need oxygen, because it's not their real bodies.
But then wouldn't the
imagined fire
the imagined match that they dreamed over from the blue sphere to the red sphere? I feel like we needed to stop and think about what was actually plausible in the context of this world.
Yeah.
And their means of achieving
stick to it.
Because they kept getting like so fixated on lugging the supplies and falling over, and it's like slowing them down, and half of it's useless, but they've got like zillions of things there. Like, after listing all the things that they have, I don't even get how 8 people lugged that all around, because I don't think Atwood was actually carrying anything himself.
Of course not.
And then they kept losing
But they did
people.
conveniently say it was lighter because they were on Mars.
And again, it's imagined stuff. Why couldn't they have imagined it in their time of need?
Yeah.
And yet it was physical, so that when the other abyss wasp people came and attacked them, they just took it, and it was fine. Until they drank the ink and realized it was poisonous.
Like, that's not food, guys.
But go ahead, take all the ink, because why do we need ink on Mars?
Yeah.
Just, the whole campaign expedition made no sense. The only part that made sense was when Josephine transferred her soul into the body of the wasp alien. Which, again, me thinking about the premise of this story, that should be the part where I'm like, what the hell is going on? But that actually worked. That was like the only part of this book that actually worked.
Well,
we
and
are
actually,
now a wasp-like alien.
They never really explain, and that's something that's interesting, is you've got all those bodies, right, that are missing their souls. They never really fully explained that.
Yeah. Because it was during crossings. So are they also soul crossing?
Well, because they were saying that some people didn't survive the crossing to the moon, but those would be the people that just didn't make it at all. But then these people, they were saying like they were, like what they feared was like the people of the Eye or whatever that had some sort of weapon that could like push their souls out, but how and when, and they never really clarified that.
Yeah, I would assume that's like the stuff that Atwood was doing.
Because Piccadilly stopped talking to her because he was scared, and then there was Hestia who died, and they were just like, we really should have her. She would explain like everything to us.
Yeah.
That sucks. Awfully convenient, Mr. Gilman, that the person who could explain all these plot holes died like right after you introduced her. Thanks for that.
Yeah.
I want to rewrite this book.
Oh, Jesus.
Yeah. Well, that's my thing too, is like because it really does feel like it just wasn't given the proper time to develop, and
We never got more development on Mrs. Archer and why people feared her so much, and
True.
what the consequence of her joining the order was going to. We don't know what was up with him, but he's dead now, so that's.
Yeah, so
Also, why did that not mess things up? Because wasn't it like when
They needed 9.
yeah, like when they went with Josephine and like she got pulled out of it, like it messed the whole thing up. This time somebody dies when they're trying to go, and oh whatever, the rest of them just keep going.
Well, no, and the thing is, they were semi-conscious when that happened because it was so immediate, and yet
Yeah.
they still managed to get their souls out.
And all of the stuff with them.
Yeah, and all the imaginary stuff.
Yeah. Also, Jupiter is played like she's I don't know, shown as such a strong character, but then at the
And
end
then she willingly sat
Yeah, she's
out
just like-
because she was a woman, and they didn't trust putting a woman on this because look what happened to Josephine.
Yeah.
And yet Mrs. Archer was there.
and then to top it all off, after all that, she had no idea what Atwood was doing, and she was really just completely in the dark. I'm like, I feel like her
And
character
Mr. Sun was the only one who knew anything, but he died.
Or
So he could
suspected
never
anything,
divulge what he
yeah.
knew to anyone. Again, thanks, Mr. Gilman. People who have all the answers conveniently died. Right when we found out that they had all the answers.
And I felt like Mr. Sun could have been a really interesting character to actually
Yes.
work with more, because like that thing, like that little watch that Arthur had at the beginning that was like, I don't know,
It
borrowed
slowed
time
time.
that would slow things down. Yeah, and
Yeah.
Mr. Sun's like, oh,
And
well,
Mrs.
that's
Sun
my
was
time,
the
so I'll take that
bird
back.
in his stitches.
That was
It
weird.
was able to
And,
save him.
and he's just like, you just owe me one for that.
Yeah.
But what did the bird actually accomplish other than a moment of confusion?
Didn't it poke somebody's eyes or something? I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it was.
But I felt like that character who clearly actually had some useful magic, like that could have been really quite
Yeah.
interesting, and we never really got to see that.
Mm-hmm.
So many things where it was like, if this had been like done differently, or if there had been more emphasis here and less emphasis on all of the dry stuff, it could have been really good,
Yeah.
which almost makes it more frustrating.
It wouldn't need a lot of change to actually be an awesome story. You just have to. We needed a better narrator. It's the narrator who doesn't know how to tell the story.
Yeah.
But there were some neat little concepts that came up. I liked this one when they were talking about what the magic is and how things have come to be in the Miss Dido. She's talking about decay in the world, and a glass wants to shatter. The things of this world tend towards decay. The trick is to keep them whole. And I'm like, oh, there's neat little philosophical things in here, and seeing how that would actually play out. But then it turns out to be kind of the reverse at the end, because those civilizations that supposedly were extinct and died out, they want to be whole. So it's not actually going that way. Oh, and the other thing, we talked about the fight at the Savoy, or no, not was it? Yeah, it was at the Savoy.
Yeah.
And Arthur's trying to remember all those things those magician chicks that were taught to him. Where were those conversations? That would have been interesting to actually get Arthur's tutorial session, and it made because we don't know that Ms. Archer is there hiding in the back somewhere. All of a sudden, we get Arthur who's like, I don't know what's going on, because again, what Arthur's confused about now. But then he strides into the restaurant and he's like, I'm a super magician that can out-mind game you. And you're just like, where did this come from?
Yeah,
because
when? What?
2 pages ago, he was like, magic is scary, and I don't understand.
I really did feel like a lot of Arthur could have been cut. So much of it could have been cut. Even all of the stuff with the engine, really, in theory.
That could have just been mentioned. It had...
Yeah. Well, and even that, like, you didn't even need Arthur to get involved through that necessarily, because he could have gotten involved through Josephine being involved.
Well, and that's how it did happen.
Yeah, but like all that stuff, I'm just like, let's just take all that stuff and.
Our focus should have been on Josephine. She was the only one that was achieving any development.
Yeah.
Josephine and Mars, Moon.
Yeah.
Stuff.
And it says it was romance. But we got that very well, we got that like drawn out, nothing is happening, but you two want to be engaged. Like this is just dull. Nothing's actually we get it. You like each other and you both work really hard.
And then you get Orpheus and you're like, yes, here it comes. Orpheus and Josephine.
Because you've got this awesome like princely warrior dude and she's in a new body and then it's just like, and then it's done.
When she's in the new body, she kind of starts to like forget her old self, right? Like she gets in this weird mix of like, I remember this, but I'm remembering this from this body, and so you think like that she'll just kind of like how Arthur kind of forgot about her when he was on Mars.
Yeah.
I was like thinking that she was just gonna like eventually just completely forget, and yeah.
Well, especially when they got there and they had the first attack, but they didn't really talk about which of the wasp people were attacking. So it was that like they said like, oh, we shot a female, and you're like, oh my goodness, what if that happened, because they didn't know that she was a wasp thing. But I mean, it was so soon after us just getting used to watching Josephine, like, oh god, the pacing is awful, Mr. Gilman.
Another little thing is, how did, like, if Josephine couldn't tell who was male and female, how are they able to tell who was male and female?
They guessed. Apparently they were better guessers than Josephine, who watched them for months.
And they couldn't tell. I think, well, maybe it's because they were there more substantially than she was. They were able to better intuit in the magic of the world and the telekinesis crap leaking in. And she
I don't think so, because they were going mad faster. She got more insanity.
Yeah, because she was just more like float, 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 float.
And observe. Observe.
Occasionally blink out of existence, but then I'm back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we could have sat there through more revolutions of like the cyclical revolutions.
I was gonna say the title.
Because I only think because in I think it's degree 7 or 8 they talk about the distinctions in the different spheres and the revolutions of time. It's the only time actual revolutions is talked about, and it has like you would think there's the magical war, which could be some sort of like spiritual scientific revolution, but that's not played up enough. There was just that part where they talk about the cyclical revolution, but again it's only like one little chapter, and it's not played up, but I think that would have been really interesting because they talked a couple times. I mean, she blinked out of the first one when the red or the abyss got close enough that the crossing happened, so everyone was like naturally getting more agitated, and she could feel the tension rise. So she missed that cycle because she blinked out of it. She just saw the aftermath. But then the second one she got to see, and that's when she like got them to rise up against it. But I think that could have slowed down, so when she actually does see the full effects, and then knowing what was happening, like I think there could have been more time built into that, and then she could have actually led a revolution for the Martians against the people of the Abyss.
And then there would have been a whole other meaning to the title.
Yeah. But it was just like, so many things that are there. They're it's not like they're not there. They're just
not.
They were abandoned and
poor little abandoned plot threads.
Mr. Gilman, what are you doing to us? Yeah, this one needs a rewrite.
Yeah. Well, especially because like it does feel like amidst all of the stuff that was focused on that shouldn't have been focused on, there was some good stuff. It just got lost.
We were talking about it during the...
Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say it definitely, like, it felt at times kind of like a chore to keep reading, like because it got kind of dull at certain spots.
Actually, that's exactly what I was going to say during the pre-show when we were talking about, like, again, the concept of the story actually wasn't so bad, but the physical act of reading it was like torture. And Caitlin, I find it funny that you mentioned Heart of Darkness, because that was one of the books that I think my first experiences at absolutely hating to read a book. Like, I appreciate the cultural significance of this text, but reading it is literally killing me from the inside out. And this book was like that. I'd get to the end of a chapter, and they're not long chapters, but you're just like, I feel like I need to mentally shut down now, because it's just like focusing on a whole bunch of stuff that makes no sense, and you just need to shut down.
But when I mentioned to Ashley, that really helped me when I thought about it. Was thinking of it like a TV series, but where the episodes are really long, kind of like a British series, and each degree is an episode. So I would just stop thinking about everything else that was happening and just sit down and focus on the degree, and it helped immensely.
Did you find some of the chapter breaks totally arbitrary?
Yeah.
I don't think
on one hand we would jump to a completely different time, completely different perspective, and then we'd have a succinct nope, this is just a continuation of what the last chapter is, and this is just a continuation of what the last chapter is. So there's no rhyme or reason to why anything ended where it did.
Yeah. Perfect. Commercial break. Yeah.
Any other comments on?
Not so much.
There's one quote from Arthur that I really liked when he's talking about he and Josephine talking about philosophy and Plato and stuff on page 24, and then it goes, Arthur had always considered philosophers prior to Newton to be more or less bunk, and heaven, as he imagined it, was not very different from the reading room of the British Museum. Etc., etc. But yes, I could do. Yeah, okay. Reading room.
I could be on board with that.
As long as it's not like Heaven Publishing.
Indeed.
Oh god.
So I've got 3 awards here for the Revolutions, if anyone would like to add any. It's not too late. I've got 2 author awards. One is the King of Siam Award. And if you're not aware of what that would refer to, think the king and I, etc., etc., etc. Because that's all he does. And then this was happening, etc. And this was happening, etc. And then they were talking about this, etc. Whatever happened to the show don't tell rule? Come on.
It died a very, very painful death.
Yeah. So, King of Siam Award for Mr. Felix Gilman.
Yes, I could definitely be on board with that.
Also, the Kamikaze Award for his self-destructive narrative. Because just when you think it's getting interesting, nope, we have to do something else to sabotage it so it's not interesting anymore. Why? Why do you do this to us? And then I've got 1 literary award here for Warrior Wasp Award because Josephine just totally went all badass in her wasp suit, and that was awesome.
Yeah.
It didn't last very long, but it was awesome.
Yep. It's a brief flash of awesome. I like that Warrior Wasp.
Yeah. Well, she was one of the more awesome.
That's
she was just
I didn't
constantly
really think. Oh, go ahead.
I was just say she just would constantly be the one going after the big guys or getting in there, going after Atwood.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, no. That's the funny thing is I really liked the character of Josephine, so I really wish that we'd spent more time on her side of things.
Mm-hmm.
Rather than her just being the passed out damsel in distress, when
Yeah.
actually all those awesome things were happening.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I know, right?
But we spent so much time with just her, like, consciousness.
And her body just getting passed around, being
Yeah.
kidnapped, and
It's like so much cooler stuff is going on just over there.
yeah.
We could have lingered with what was actually happening with her consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
And I would have liked more time with Piccadilly to actually find out, like, who the body she belonged to was, because that was the thing. They're like, so it was his. We guess it was probably his daughter, but we don't get the background on it, and she keeps asking, and even Orpheus is like, well, maybe I will tell you one day. And it's like,
I was actually hoping there'd be something between Orpheus and the, like,
In the body.
owner of the body. I totally expected there to be something there.
I expected that's why he showed up. It's like, I need to see this
exactly.
person.
And then there was.
Yeah.
that was your treasure right there, Mr. Gilman. That's what you needed to give us. More wasp people.
Maybe that should be an award. More wasp people, please.
It's not an award, that's a request. Needs more or a warning label we can put on this. Needs more wasp people. And then people will want to read it because they'll be like, what is this book about? They're going to Mars and there's wasp people? And we're like, no, there are not enough wasp people.
They're all dying out.
Mm-hmm. I did think it was fascinating that they flew on light, though. That was pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
I just liked everything about them.
Yeah, they were cool. There just wasn't
enough.
enough.
Culture. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm really jet lagged.
It's okay. So anyone else have any other awards? Those are the only ones I've got.
I don't have any off the top of my head. I had one that I was thinking about before, but I didn't write it down, so it has flown the coop. So if I remember, I will post it later, because
we can always add.
It has vanished.
All right. So then I guess ratings.
I gave it a 3 stars because it's very mixed feelings depending what part of the book I was in. But I really, really, really liked the wasp people and the premise, despite the earlier struggles I had with the narration.
And then the end struggles that we have with the narration. There's like 50 pages that are awesome. And then there's everything else.
Yeah. I gave it a 3. Probably closer to a 2.5, but Goodreads doesn't have 0.5 stars. Same thing, you know, it was a very middle of the road for me. I found it difficult enough to get through that I can't really justify giving it a solid 3, because there were enough times that I was, and as Ashley mentioned, the chapters weren't very long, but there was several times where I was flipping forward being like, okay, when is this chapter going to end? Which is not a good sign. But I did, like, the premise had promise, and there was definitely stuff on Mars that actually, or on the moon of Mars, that, you know, I loved. So, yeah, 2.5, 2.75 if I'm being radical. Just breaking the rating system here, so...
Yeah, I think this is one of those rare occasions where we are entirely on the same page. Like, even though the genre is like really out there and the concept is quite ambitious for trying to do it well, and unfortunately, again, we talked about the narration just doesn't do it justice, and the pacing is awful. As we talk about it, I'm still excited about these ideas.
Yeah.
And I can see what it would be. I like the way it plays out in my head so much better than when it's like actually reading it. So I gave it a 3 because of that story. But I mean, I'd say at least 80% of my reading, it's a 1.5 because it was kind of painful.
Yeah.
So it's one of those tricky ones where I don't know.
Yeah, I don't. It was like this, like, oh my God, wasp people.
If you click on the Goodreads page for this book, they have an audio clip of the audiobook.
Oh, really?
And the narrative voice sounds exactly like I picture it, so I don't know if the audiobook would be any better, because it's the exact narrative voice that I had in my head, and of course it was after, it wasn't the first thing I did, but I was just like, nope, this sounds like Arthur.
Oh,
I don't want to read it with this audio because I don't think it'll improve matters. But yeah, interesting concept. I think it just really badly needs a rewrite.
Yep, I could agree with that.
So do we know where we're going next, ladies?
Yeah, so next, I'll do page share, because I don't have the book.
This may or may not have been decided just moments before we began.
Where's the screen share? Okay. So it's going to be Snowflower and the Secret Fan by Lisa C. So, and then I'll read you the description. In 19th century China, in a remote Hunan County, a girl named Lily, at the tender age of 7, is paired with a Lao Tong, an old same. In an emotional match that will last a lifetime, the Lao Tong Snowflower introduces herself by sending Lily a silk fan, on which she has written a poem in Nushu, a unique language that Chinese women created in order to communicate in secret away from the influence of men. As the years pass, Lily and Snowflower send messages on the fan and compose stories on handkerchiefs, reaching out of isolation to share their hopes, dreams, and accomplishments. Together they endure the agony of foot binding and reflect upon their arranged marriages, their loneliness, and the joys and tragedies of motherhood. The two find solace in their friendship, developing a bond that keeps their spirits alive. But when a misunderstanding arises, their relationship suddenly threatens to tear apart.
I think that'll be interesting. And very different from things that we've read so far.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's why I picked it. Like, what haven't we really done yet? So.
Well, we definitely didn't do anything like this prior to now.
Well, it's funny because I was going to pick sci-fi, which
you still could, because this is kind of a who knows what's happening.
But it was sci-fi on Mars, so I was like, I've had enough Mars.
I don't know. These wasp people could have been anywhere. Mars is a coincidence.
I mean, if there were wasp people, then yeah, I would have. But I really don't think that was a guarantee. So that'll be May 31st. So 4 weeks.
Gotta get to ordering these books.
Well, it's shortish. So, yeah. I don't know if anyone has comments, words, things.
So I apologize if you have not gotten to the end of Revolutions. I know it's a long haul. I honestly finished it 5 minutes before we were supposed to meet for this hangout. I promise you, if you can at least get to the wasp people,
yes,
it will be worth the read. At least to get that far. Otherwise, it's a wasted journey.
I almost want to say you could. Then I feel like I'm, committing some sort of literary blasphemy by saying this. But I feel like you could just kind of skip to the wasp people. Because really, you don't need all the other stuff to appreciate the wasp people stuff.
But if you've gone so far as starting it before you chuck it across the room, get to the wasp people. It will warm your heart, and you're like, yes, wasp people, go Josephine, saving infant wasp people.
Yes.
And then it'll disappoint you again. But anyway.
But it will have had its brief moment of glory.
Yeah. That's what saves it. You need to get to that part. It's a long ways in. It's like 320 pages in to this 400-page story. But get that far. Just get to the wasp people.
And on that note.
And in that note, go get the book that has nothing to do with wasp people. And
that we will all be reading. And yeah, read things. It's good for your brain. Read all the things. Okay.
See you next time, guys.